That hurts.
Hasn't festered at least.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting today, Tuesday, December 12th. And if we'd stand at this time for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Wayne.
Thank you. So at this point, are there any changes or adjustments to this morning's agenda? Any changes to the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So now we have our public comment period, an opportunity for citizens to appear before the county board. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak this morning? Anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Have commissioners or our administrator received any public comment?
I have not, Madam Chair.
All right, we will move forward then with our consent agenda, and we have 6 items on this morning's consent agenda. Is there any item a commissioner would wish to pull? All right, seeing or hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as written?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to emergency management, and I see this morning that we have Mike Keyport with us, and he's here to talk about the Cook County Emergency Operations Plan Review. Good morning, Mike.
Good. I got a bit of a cold, so bear with me. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, community members. Every 4 years, the Emergency Operations Plan is reviewed by the county board. In between there, it has a peer review. So in other words, I typically go down to Lake County, they look at mine, I look at theirs, and we just kind of make sure. The next year, it's reviewed by what we call a review committee, which is made up of a couple emergency managers, not necessarily county emergency managers, but for instance, Minnesota Power's emergency management is on that committee and other bigger agencies. So they come up, they actually physically come up, and that's a pretty big review. They tear it up pretty good and make you fix stuff. And then lastly, the other year, it's reviewed by our regional program coordinator, which is a gentleman that we work with, emergency managers work with, that's a Homeland Security and Emergency Management staff member. So that's the rotation. And part of the reason that it's reviewed is because I do get what's called an emergency management performance grant. It's not a lot of money, usually between $15,000 and $20,000. And one of the grant duties is to keep this emergency operations plan reviewed on this schedule in order to receive that funding. A few years back, we did try to Lake County and Cook County and Grand Portage, the three of us tried to put our emergency operations plans very similar. So if I go help Lake County or Lake County comes up and helps me or Grand Portage, we're kind of on the same page. Other counties have taken it to a little different level, and I guess my plan in the future would be to have this plan, I guess I wouldn't say completely rewritten, but definitely updated, and so it kind of matches some of these other counties. Same thing if I go down to help Carleton County or whatever, that we're kind of all on the same page. I don't have time in my schedule to do that myself, so it would be probably a grant-funded. My one thought is to take this money, this 15,000, I think this year it's actually 21,000, but would be to take, instead of just using it in my budget, use a portion of that funding to just have this plan reviewed and really gone through. So it's a little more up to date. Where you folks come in, I know I did have a gentleman from Homeland Security come up and do elected officials training. I don't remember at that time if I do have a manual that was put together by our state Emergency Management Association. We just met yesterday. I'm on the association board. I represent all of Region 2, the Northeast region, on that board of directors. And we are going to have this manual updated also. So hopefully by the end of 2024, this manual will be updated. But I do have several copies. If anybody doesn't have one or would like a copy to go over, please get a hold of me, and I think I just looked at my cabinet. I probably got a dozen of them. So, so if that's something you're interested in, the other thing from your end of the, if we go back to the pandemic, some of you were here, and how we worked it then, because I considered the pandemic kind of a slow-moving event compared to, let's say, a wildfire or an ice storm. So we had time, when I say we, public health and myself, reported to the board as to what we were working on, if we needed funding for any things, and that's where, in the EOC world, we call it, you would be the policy committee, because you're the ones that allow us to spend money if it's over and above something. You know, if I needed something super expensive like helicopters in a wildfire or something, I would definitely be bringing you together to help me make that decision. And again, I will always be your liaison through the administrator, and then to you, you know, during any major incident. You know, I would be at the incident command center getting the information, how things are moving, report that to the county administrator, and then on up to you for, again, any of that decision making, just so you kind of know how that works. The one other thing I wanted to bring up was, if anybody's interested in ICS, Incident Command System training, there are many online options for that. Likely at the spring conference, we're going to offer a couple. I would like to offer a couple of them in person. I'm not a total fan of online training. I think it's more beneficial in person. But if that's something you're interested in, the basic ones are typically ICS 100, 200, 700, and 800. And if it's something you're interested in, get a hold of me, and I can definitely lead you in the right direction. So I believe that's all I have for you this morning. I'll stand for questions, however.
Any questions? Commissioner Hawkins, you have one?
Thank you. So I'm really glad you're here this morning to help me understand things better. That was a dense document to try to read through.
It is.
And lots of acronyms. But going back to, you said the grant was about 21,000. Yet in our budget today, it's 16,000 that we were expecting. But you want to use part of that for updating something else. Is that reflected in your budget as presented today?
It isn't at this point, but that it's designed to be used for anything emergency management wise, like for instance, like for educational purposes, like the fire chiefs and myself had carbon monoxide awareness refrigerator magnets made here this few month or so ago. And there was a cost to that, of course, so I use it for stuff like that also. Some of it gets used sometimes for the conference, not always. Me and Brady have kind of talked about that there's a match to it, so my salary is the match, so we kind of have to be careful how we use that too, so.
Okay.
I hope that explained it a little bit.
So, to update this plan, do you have a cost estimate if you're going to hire somebody to do this or
I
contract this out?
don't, I do not, no, I haven't got that far, I mean, it's a workable document, it's not urgently needed to be updated, but again, it's just nicer in our region that they're all kind of similar. So again, if somebody comes to help me or I go to help them, we know what we're looking for. And I hate to say it, but any plan it's a plan, and I don't care how well you write a plan, it's just not going to cover every individual incident. It's almost impossible to do that. But it's definitely a great guide as to, I mean, that's the first thing we brought out when we opened an ELC for the pandemic, is everybody got a copy of the emergency operations plan. So.
I thought it was very detailed.
It is.
Somebody's
It
thought
is.
through all the things. I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive that somebody identified all those things. So I appreciate that.
For sure.
So going back to the emergency management conference then, that budget increased a lot this year for presenters. And can you explain why?
Well, presenters aren't cheap, for one thing. One of the presenters was $5,000. However, we do get a block grant from the North Shore Healthcare Foundation of typically $4,000 to $5,000, so that's a big help. There is some other donations made there. Because it hadn't been done in a couple years, most of that, the other costs, which there wasn't a lot, most of the food was donated. And the other presenters that we had were either state employees or whatever, and they did not charge us even for rooms. So the rest of that funding came out of my, either that EMPG or my regular budget. So it wasn't a big effect on my budget at all, really.
Well, it almost doubled the presenter cost. So that's what I was wondering. If we get free presenters, why are we expected to pay more than we did this year?
That's a good question, and that was my first year ever doing it, and without a lot of help, so I was really just winging it, for lack of a better word, because I had never done it before, so.
And so the North Shore Health Grant, or block grant, you said, does that just come to us, or do you have to apply for it? How does that funding come?
We used to have to apply for it. They chose to share it now with the fire departments. So it's typically a $6,000 grant, or 6 or 8, I can't remember, and we kind of have to apply for it, but it's not as formal as a normal grant. And typically 4 of that, for sure, sometimes 5 goes to the conference. The other of it is used however the fire chiefs see fit. 2 years ago, they bought containers. They're going to cut up and make into a training facility in Hoagland. And so because there was no conference, because of the pandemic, I let them, instead of stockpiling that money, which I could have, probably should have, maybe, thinking about it right now, but I let them use that money to buy them containers to get working on their training facility, so.
Well, that seems like a good use also.
It was a good use, for sure, yeah.
And this, I guess maybe for Brady then, that block grant didn't show up yet on our quarter 3 budget report that you gave us last month. Do you expect that just to get mailed to you, or how do we account for that in his budget versus fire department?
I have a separate account for the conference, it's separate from my actual, I have 3 accounts. I have one for the 911 system, one for my regular budget, and one specifically for the conference. And Brady and I also did talk about that, if that's the best way to go, or how to look. Maybe there, in the future, there's a better way to do that. I don't know. But
Yeah, I just remember last month it hadn't shown up yet, and we're just wondering when
typically-
how that gets in there.
We typically apply for it by the end of the year, and then it's released in the spring.
Okay, I wondered if it was just
Yeah.
a timing issue.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to have it in our ideas by the end of the year. The fire chiefs are talking about it right now, and then I am gonna ask for my portion for the conference, knowing that we'll have a conference again. So we'll kind of get back on our normal schedule, I guess.
And I just want to thank you for all your work on the plan. I, when I was at AMC, attended emergency management session, and all the directors that were presenting there talked about the importance of reviewing them on a regular basis, working with regional partners, and so I just appreciate the work you do, and particularly in light of the discussions I had with other areas and other emergency management people. So thanks for
Sure.
your leadership with this.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mike, for putting this together. I didn't have a chance to really compare it because way back 4 years ago when I was chair, I guess I must have misfiled the whole thing at one time. Is there anything in here that has changed significantly?
Not significantly, not at all, really.
Okay.
I mean, it's been pretty, I've been here for going on 4 years, and it hasn't changed since I've been here anyway.
Okay.
But remembering that a couple years of that, we were just tied up with the pandemic, so much work getting done anyway, but.
You know what the definition of an expert is? They have to go 50 miles away or better. So, when we go to conferences, we always have the expert, you know, whether it was Jim putting it together or Valerie or yourself. And I think, you know, I appreciate you using as many locals as you can. I remember when we were up at Portage and we had FEMA come out from Washington DC. That was a big deal. Those were the experts
Yeah.
that helped guide us. And so I think once in a while, if you have to use the expert from far away, it's worth our time because there's some important topics that we all aren't familiar with here. So I think I appreciate that, and I know the budget is significant too, but
For sure,
you've
yeah.
done a good
I'm-
job.
I'm glad you brought that up because what Commissioner Storley is speaking to is in 2015, we had what's called an integrated emergency management course in Grand Portage, coordinated with Cook County and our Canadian partners. It's a 3.5-day event, classroom trainings, and then building up to an exercise. There's what's known as the Emergency Management Institute out in the East Coast, and there's no cost. Anybody can go out there and be trained on different subjects, but instead of us all leaving the county in the tribe to go out there, they came to us. It's a lot of paperwork. I bring it up because Region 2, which is 11 county, 5 tribes in the city of Duluth, in 2025 is going to do one of them within the region. So if any of you commissioners are still around and want to jump on board with that, you'd definitely be invited.
Any other questions or comments for Mike? Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Chair. What are the highlighted, like, MN Walk 2 or MN Walk 4? And
We have another document that's just a quick way for us I have another document that goes with that.
Yeah.
That leads you to, it's called MinWalk. It's a state, in part of the Emergency Management Chapter 12, it's a state statute. We have to have that in our emergency operations plan. It just leads you to another document that says this involves planning, or this involves preparedness, or this involves response. So it's,
yeah, thank you.
yeah.
And then the only other thing I wanted to bring up was just Appendix C, which is the distribution list. We got to update that.
Yep.
But otherwise, looks great. Thank you very much for your work, and I appreciate the reminder of how this is implemented and reviewed, and
For sure.
it's a never-ending process.
Yeah, yeah, that is the truth.
Other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the Cook County Emergency Operations Plan.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Is there support?
I'll support it.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
And at this time, we have Assessor Thompson coming forward to talk to us about Papa Charlie's and the fire that happened there last summer.
All right, good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners.
Morning.
Today, I am just bringing forward a request for property tax abatement for the Papa Charlie's building that burned down on June 24th. So we've calculated 6 months of the building refund, comes out to $13,100. There's also a statement of facts that's, provided with the abatement request from management at Papa Charlie's. So if you've had a chance to read that over. The cause of the fire was undetermined, so we're bringing the abatement request forward to the board today.
Any questions for Assessor Thompson? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the request for abatement for property taxes for Papa Charlie's.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the request for the abatement of the property taxes of $13,100.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Storley. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And now, Land Services, Tim Nelson. And Tim, we're not going to take a break. We're going to let you continue.
Are we sure, Madam Chair?
We are sure.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you and good morning, all. I'm just going to tee this up. As the county surveyor here, we have Wayne Henchy, has a grant project, and what I will do is just say that I know that accurate corners has always kind of been an issue. I remember many years ago, we actually had a boundary commission where we shifted like almost entire neighborhoods because of the accuracy of corners, and obviously as we progress on in technology and everything, getting a greater level of accuracy is good and better for everybody. So Wayne, come on up. So I'm just going to tee it up and let Wayne go ahead and present his pitch there.
And while Wayne is coming forward, I just want to share with the rest of the board that he is so prepared. He approached us several weeks ago with a packet of information, had everything very thoroughly laid out, and it makes it very easy to move forward when we have this kind of information and detail. So I appreciate, Wayne, you putting all of that together.
Here's some goodies, tools of the trade. This is an old compass that, it's a near replica of the original survey back in the 1850s, 1870s. Passed around to us.
Oh, I'm going to drop it.
This is what we're looking for in the woods.
What?
See the scribing here?
Yep.
I won't make a mess here, but to make the BT for a bearing tree, you take this one and you pull, and then to make the B,
Oh, sure. Spin it like a compass.
and the T. There's your bearing tree. That's how they did it 100 years ago.
Did they have, or I guess 100 years ago they didn't, but are X's and O's also used, or?
Somehow, I'm not hearing well.
Oh, I'm sorry, are X's and O's used as well? I've seen painted X's and painted O's on trees, but,
Sometimes they do that when it's a duplicate.
thank
But
you.
yeah, that's all. These guys are hard to find,
Yeah.
especially when they're buried under a tree that fell on it.
Yeah.
And there are a few of those in Cook County, that's for sure.
So you have to bear with me. I've chainsawed for so many years, I can't hear very well, so if you could speak up, please. I'm Henry, county surveyor, contract county surveyor. I'm the guy who fixed Hovland, 4 townships out there. That was land where people wouldn't even go. Realtors wouldn't go there, surveyors wouldn't go there, but you guys sent me out there. So we got it done. With the help of people like Tim Nelson and Tim Kennedy, Brady and Carol Greshik, they helped me get through all of that. We did 2 unique boundary commissions. One on Tom Lake. There were 36 lots that they laid out, but there was only land for 34. And all these owners came sat in this very room, and we duked it out. At alternative F, we finally came to an agreement. On Moose Valley, Jay LaFavor not only didn't own his house, he owned the house 2 houses up. So that's the kind of stuff you guys have been having me do over the years. I'll burn through all of this, but one thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is this top thing that I gave you. This is the order from the district court. The 2012 case that we held here upstairs, there was a out-of-county surveyor that tried to challenge a county plat, and we had to go at it. But we prevailed, and it's part of what I'm going to have to do out here is we've got a lot of unofficial surveys out here. There's only 1 plat in the area. Old corners are just fine, but they got to have been set right. Otherwise, we have to deal with it. This gives you the testimony of what happened during the whole thing. This is the project area, just east of town here. And what it does is it plugs the gap that we have in the GIS layer. Good old Kyle, we fought through how to do the Survey Explorer, the digital land layer. Well, I've got stuff in there all the way up the shore from Schroeder to the Grand Portage Reservation, but this is a hole that's right in the middle of it. And we're trying to, I picked this area for a bunch of reasons, which I'll go over later. There's about 7 reasons for this grant. These maps show the 2 surveys that were done in there. One of them is 150 years old and the other one's 93 years old. Our corner network out there is getting old. And that's why this is involved here, is just to protect the skeleton that holds everything together and bring it into the modern age where we've got good coordinates in valuable lands. So that's the first reason. There's lots of dividable land out there, and it'll improve the tax base if we can keep a good corner network going. One of the things I thought was the most shocking, I talked to Virginia Dietrich, and if you look in the bottom of your pile there, there's a copy of her dad who was running as a county commissioner years ago. But Virginia says, for raw land out here on Lake Superior, per front foot, I won't have you guess, but $2,000 and $2,500 a front foot. If it's a piece of developed land with a house on it, and I was just stunned by this, $800,000 to $1.2 million, each one of them. And we're going right smack down the middle of it. One of the nice things about what we're trying to do with Kyle is the Survey Explorer. This grant people, they only want square boxes, the outside of the section. But Kyle and I, that's not good enough. We want a landowner to have some good coordinates within several hundred feet of their house, so that they can put their little handheld GPS in and actually look for corners in the middle of summer when it's a jungle out there, or even in the wintertime under shallow snow. There's two handouts in here. This one is the main one. And this gives all the particulars. I'll get right to it. The key items that this MinGeo is looking for to have the grant even get high consideration. First one is maximum value to the public and the tax base. Well, we just talked about it. You know how expensive that land is. So we got a check mark there. They want 0.16 foot accuracy on all these corners. And guess what? We've had the U.S. GPS constellation for years. We stole the Russian GPS constellation. We got away with that. But now there's two more constellations up there. One is the European and the other one's the Chinese. At any one time, I can waltz out there with my GPS receiver, which is about 50 grand, by the way, and I can have about 30 satellites in view. 30. You get pretty good answers with 30 satellites, all checking against one another. I've been working on this grant. I'm actually part of the committee. They got $9.2 million, and I've been working on it for the last 3 weeks. They want eroded corners next to Lake Superior taken care of. And that's, our corners out here on Lake Superior are heavily damaged. That lake keeps pounding on them, and we lose them. Every year we lose some more. This will put them back in. They want a jurisdictional boundary someplace in there. I think I found one between two commissioner districts, for starters. There's another one is the Cadence River State Park. You see all those 50 cars parked out there every year in the summertime? Well, that's a jurisdictional boundary. They're hard to find, but we got them. And they're looking for places where the original public land survey has never been fully restored. Well, this township just immediately east of town, we're sitting on an 1858 survey and a couple of piecemeal surveys scattered in there, but it's 160 some years old. It's looking for somebody to come and take care of it. And we got the money for free to do it. If you look on page 4 of this thing, they give a ranking, and outstate counties get to have a higher score. If you look on there, Lake County is sitting at 498, but they don't have much of a public land system at the recorder's office, nor in our GIS. That's one of the reasons why it's so high. We come in at about 107. But guess what? We're a whole lot more competitive than St. Louis County and Hennepin County. So that puts us pretty high on the list of being able to get this grant. The budget is this sheet right here. And the nice thing about it is we've got $100 in there for Kyle. So right off the top, you can decrease his salary for $100 because it's going to come from the state. Unfortunately, see what comes first. Okay, there's no cost to the county, no cost to the landowner, no unfunded mandates. To make any of this work, you've got this resolution that we need, well, we need Brady to have it all filled out and signed. But if I can talk you guys into going forward with this, this is the key document they need. The county board has to be online or it goes nowhere. Unfortunately, they want Brady to fill out this Exhibit D. Now, I'm sure everybody's been well vetted before they come here, but they want him to fill out a chart of anybody in the county who has access to these funds. I'm sure nobody here has been convicted of a felony in the last 10 years, but they want to know that too. The last thing, and then we'll open it up for questions, and I can't hear very well, is I've talked to Molly about this, and there's an issue that I can't make application for this unless I have paid a $2,000 bond. When I was first appointed the surveyor, that was waived. But if Molly says that that's how it's got to be, that's how it's going to be. I'll write a check for $2,000 to Brady, and we'll carry on. So open it up to questions. I may have to depend on Tim to be able to hear. For some reason, I don't hear well in this room.
Good luck with that, 'cause
I got my hearing aids in, I still can't hear. It's
Are
like
there any-
chainsaw.
Are there questions for Wayne? Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Wayne, for being here and presenting this and working on this. This is extremely critical for our community and county, and we've had a brief briefing on it at AMC talking about this upcoming thing around the state, so I appreciate the follow-through. As far as that bond is concerned, can that be compensated from the grant after the fact, or is it just out of your pocket? And
The bond, they're wondering if that can be compensated out of the grant, or if that's just out of your pocket, or do you get
No,
that
that's out
back?
of my pocket. That's all right.
Other questions? Comments? Commissioner
Well, I'd like
Hawkins?
to have our attorney's opinion on what this bond is for, and, I mean, why do we require that?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Hawkins, thank you. The bond is something that's required to formalize the county surveyor obligations and to secure them. So it's right in the statute. It's not related to this specific project. It's instead related to the qualifications and performance of duties of the county surveyor. And the statute is, there's no real authority that it provides to waive the bond. I understand that the commissioners have done that before. I can just report that I don't see authority for that. I don't know the real impact of you waiving the bond. I think it's ultimately less protective of the county, but you're also working with somebody here who has dedicated his career to the county since 1995. I think you can weigh the risks of that, so.
Thank you, I appreciate the background.
So I pay the bond.
Not yet.
I got the checkbook right here.
Commissioner White?
So it's a performance bond.
Okay.
And so will that money return to him after his duties as a surveyor for the county are complete?
Correct, yes.
So you'll get your money back when you retire?
I don't know if he heard you.
Tim?
Yeah, Wayne, they're saying you pay the bond, but when it's all done, you get that money back?
When he retires as county surveyor.
When you
That
retire
depends.
as a county surveyor.
These grants are available every year. If we can keep this thing going, getting this free money from them, you keep my money.
Until you retire.
Until I retire.
Yeah.
All right. Other
So-
questions? Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm trying to remember when you did this last for Cook County, I think we paid for it out of the recorder technology fund. Do you I was wondering how long ago that was, that the last time we did this. Okay, but so this is a new grant, then this is why we're bringing this forward, because this is a new grant to get this done, and we don't have to use levy money, or,
So the last time we did this, that was out of the recorder's fund or some other fund. This is a new grant altogether. Do you remember when the last time we did this?
The last project that we did?
Yeah.
The last project we did were citizen petitions.
All right.
It's a different statute,
okay.
and each citizen paid a share of it. There was no cost to the county other than administrative costs. So this is a completely different deal. This area is so big with so many owners, we can't do a citizen petition here. And those were done with cost shares with the Forest Service and DNR, and they don't own enough land in here to really cost share with them. That's why this grant is so crucial and going forward, because it's no cost to the county.
Other questions? Well, if not, since most of this is in District 4, which is the district I represent, I would like to make a motion to support the grant submitted by the contracted Cook County surveyor for the restoration of survey corners, and to designate Cook County Auditor as the fiscal agent for the grant if approved.
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. So we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for your work.
Can I grab my compass back?
It's beautiful. Thank you for bringing those items for us, and it'll be fun to be walking in the woods and see what we find on some of those trees.
They used to take shots on bearing trees from this. They'd set it up over the corner, and they could read it down to a quarter degree.
Amazing.
I learned from the best from the Forest Service, old Sheldon Norby over in Ely. That guy, he could find stuff, he put me to shame, but I learned the hard way.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much.
I remember one of the biggest discrepancies in those Hovland surveys was, I think it was over 800 feet. So that's why people's houses were on other people's lands, et cetera, so.
This is very important work, and AMC has spoken to us for the last few years about this, and we knew it was coming, so it's exciting to see it happening.
Madam Chair, not to get us too far off topic, but how was that resolved?
Well, he's the expert, but it's really, you ignore the legal descriptions that each owner was given, and you create a plat
Okay.
with corners that are now, resolved.
That
They're
reflect
set.
what's on the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we know where they were, and I remember him saying that some of these surveyors from, 200 years ago, et cetera, they would do surveys where they could, and then he said, you look up on that ridge over there, they did something, some of them didn't do the survey over that ridge. They did estimates, because it was too difficult to haul chains, et cetera. And there were so few people involved, and to do that kind of survey. There weren't like hundreds and thousands of landowners that were paying for, whatever. So they took shortcuts sometimes.
Right. And I know about that in Tom Lake because our daughter was a lawyer for Dick Swanson. And the property owners, this is on Tom Lake, we had done work for a number of those cabins up there, and they sold, it was a brief moment in time where they sold their property to her for $1, and then there was a changeover of the descriptions for a moment in time, and one of the property owners earned or gained an entire new lot on the whole thing. And they were from Florida, and so they gained a whole new lot that they intend to build on, and they sold their old building. So, interesting.
Yeah.
That's Cook County.
it's really, that just drives home the importance of the work that is going to be done, because those lines have to be accurate, those corners have to be accurate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll move on in our agenda at this point in time, and welcome Allison Plummer. She's here for Human Resources with a job description and job grade update. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. I just want to say I haven't seen Wayne since my days in the assessor's office, and so it was great to see him today. It's been quite a while. And then the whole discussion brings me back to my days in the assessor's office, too, with all of the line issues. So, but different topic, human resources. So today I bring to you a recommendation to approve another job description and classification change for one of our positions. This is for the Chief Deputy County Recorder and Registrar of Titles. This job is currently filled by Holly Schroeder. So the job description and classification process has been completed by Tessa and myself with DDA and myself reviewing everything. So today I bring forth the revised job description, and then the classification change recommendation from a 150 to a 160.
Are there any questions for Allison this morning? Any questions? All right, if not, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. Is there support?
I'll support.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. So before we get into our discussion with the auditor about cash balance, are there any commissioners that would like to take a break briefly? All right. We'll take a 5-minute break and be back at 9:30 to continue. Thank you. Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Cook County Board of Commissioners meeting. We're returning from a short break, and we're on item number 8. And Auditor Powers, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this item it leads into the next item, so not looking for any real discussion at this time or any decisions. Just at our last Budget Advisory Commission meeting, we were talking about the upcoming budget, and I mentioned how much interest we were making this year unexpectedly because of the high rates, Federal Reserve policies, et cetera. And the committee felt pretty strongly, they discussed, well, maybe we should, looking at an estimate of maybe $500,000 over what we budgeted for this year, rather than just let it go into the fund balance. They discussed a lot about, well, should we recommend that the board use some of that to lower the levy? And then we also discussed the other, upcoming or continuing effort, the capital improvement plan, and maybe designate it as cash to lower that bond that we'd have to issue, because that would be a long-term, say, gain, because those rates are high too right now. Same reason. Bond rates are a little higher than they have been. We've been used to really low rates for a while, and they're not there right now. So they just asked that you discuss that and try and make a decision on that $500,000 rather than just letting it go to the fund balance. And I'll just leave it there for the next item.
All right, thank you so much. Administrator Yorkie.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So item 9A, of course, is approval of the fiscal year 2024 budget and levy. I have highlighted some of the key points about this budget in the cover sheet for the item, just to summarize those. So the proposed levy is about $11.6 million for 2024. That includes a 3.5% cost of living adjustment, both for staff and for elected officials. And then it also includes a 7.3% increase in health insurance premiums for next year. There is only one new position that is proposed to be included in this budget, and that is the Assistant County Attorney position. Estimated total cost of that is about $129,000. And then also, since the board set the preliminary levy back in September, we have made some additional changes to the budget in the sheriff's office and also public health and human services. So due to vacancies, we're proposing to reduce their requests. And so that is driving down the final levy proposal. We do have fund balance being used by both the Highway Department and PHHS. And then we are using some of our local assistance and tribal consistency fund dollars. That's part of the American Rescue Plan Act in the amount of roughly $300,000. And so based on all of that, that would put the proposed levy at 6.47% total, which is a decrease of over 2.5% over the preliminary levy that the board set in September. As Brady mentioned, the Budget and Facilities Advisory Committee a couple of weeks ago discussed the unexpected interest income that the county has received through its investments. And so there's also the $500,000 of unanticipated revenue that the committee has recommended the board consider to apply either to the levy for next year or to use that for CIP expenses to reduce the need for bonding, or some combination of those two things.
Can I just,
Yeah.
one correction, the actual proposed levy, there's two numbers on the sheet I gave you. That was actually last year's final levy, the 11,601, so the proposed was $12,645,000.
Oh,
it was right next to
okay.
it. It was just
Gotcha,
the other number.
gotcha.
So it was $12,645,794.
My apologies for the error. But it is correct. If you
Yeah.
look at the the budget document, yeah, I'm sorry, I pulled that from the wrong column. Yes, the proposed levy for this year then is about $12.35 million. But the percentage change is correct. It's about 6.47%.
Yeah.
Thanks for the correction, Brady.
All right. So as we get started, let's see. I guess first of all, I'd open it up to any commissioners if there are comments or thoughts you have. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. With the suggestion of using up to 500,000, what amount would affect the levy? If we were to lower the levy out of this is what they're asking, or suggesting?
They're suggesting that we look at the possibility of lowering the levy and/or keeping this as cash to help us with our bonding.
Yeah. I ran some numbers. To get it from 6.47 down to 6 would take 54,000 of that. To get it to 5.5 would take 112,000. To get it to 5% would take 170,000. And to get it to our long-term average of about 4.4 would take 235,000.
So it's
Yeah.
almost half.
Yeah. And any other number you'd like, I can.
Well, thank you for calculating those. That's really helpful. That's really helpful. Other questions right now for Auditor Powers or for James? Commissioner Hawkins, you look like you're...
I really wanted to be last. I want to hear everybody else's opinion first, but I don't know, maybe nobody else has concerns. My biggest concern is we're using 1.2 million in fund balance to get it to 6.47. And I totally support the highway department. I get they're using some of that fund balance for a capital expense of a new building. I think which is appropriate use of fund balance for one-time things. I really am leery of using fund balance for ongoing expenses. If we were to take the local tribal aid and the child care subsidies and actually pay for them, like we should be paying for things that are ongoing expenses, we'd be at a 12%, closer to a 12% levy increase instead of a 6.47. So we have to decide, are these things that we have the capability as a county to continue on into the future, not just right now? And I was part of that budget discussion of back and forth, and I get both sides of that. I'd be more comfortable of changing our budget and say, you know, I think we still are budgeting low of what we probably are going to get in interest in this 2024 year. Let's increase it. We went up 30,000, I think it was. Let's increase it to 80,000 then, or another 50,000, or I don't know. But that would be another option instead of using fund balance to fund ongoing expenses into the future. Because we do have deferred maintenance issues. We have millions of dollars of deferred maintenance that we have told the public we are going to address. And why should we spend it for ongoing expenses here and then go out and bond and pay high interest rates instead of using our cash balance for that, which is a one-time thing. Hopefully, we get our deferred maintenance one-time thing instead of ongoing expenses. So that's my concern with this budget as it's been presented.
Other questions or concerns? Other ideas?
So, Madam Chair, so Commissioner Hawkins, how would you, are you considering lowering the levy at all in your conversation? You want to have more money to pay for immediate things, but how are we going to deal with the levy? Is that important to you?
Yeah, yes, the levy, I think, I've been reading about structurally imbalanced budgets this last week, and to me, this is a structurally imbalanced budget. So I guess I would like to dig into some of the line items then. So, and it's just for clarification, our environmental health budget is showing a 53% reduction in proposed revenues, and only a 13% reduction in expenses. I'm wondering if we are not getting a grant that we normally get over the years, which is causing this reduction in revenues, what services were we paying or getting for that? And is there a way to make that up some other way?
You're looking at land services, you said?
Environmental health
Environmental
is the one
health.
I pulled up here first.
Sorry, I'm not there yet.
So, as we're looking at environmental health, the 2023 approved was 88,169, and the proposed for this year is 128,404.
I think I would ask Tim Nelson to speak to that. I see that, yeah, the grant revenues is down by 18,500.
Well, the other state grant is also down 73%.
So we presented,
Page are you on?
this would be page 33. We can certainly have this discussion. I'm wondering why it's coming up on the day that we're asking for approval of the budget when we submitted the proposed budget back in September. And I have not received a question about this prior to today. And so, I can call Tim into the room if we want to dig through line items, but I'm just confused why we haven't had this conversation earlier.
There he is, right on cue.
Please.
Thank you, Mr.
How did you
Nelson.
know?
Spidey sense.
And I actually didn't really hear too much of the nature of the discussion, so if you have questions, you're going to have to ask me.
Okay.
And you don't even have to scream the question.
So I'm wondering, environmental health has a huge reduction in proposed or revenues
Yes.
for next year. And I'm wondering
Yes.
why and what services those grants paid for.
Yeah. Okay, Madam Chair and Commissioner Hawkins, that it's just reflective of the One Watershed, One Plan grant funds. We had through 2020, 2021, 22, 23, we had grant funds through the One Watershed, One Plan that we used for our septic inspection and upgrade program to catch up on all those inspections. And then we have ended up with additional funds this last year to go ahead and do a new section of inspections, and so those funds are running out, and so we no longer have those. So that budget, the environmental health budget, when we do those programs or we get those grants, will be inflated that year and then decline back to what would be more normal. What you have reflected for 2024 would be more normal, and we just wouldn't be doing the extra services that we would be doing during a grant cycle.
If I'm correct, this is the money that we got from Lake County to do additional.
It is. We had both money we got directly from Bowser through the grant that was earmarked for us, and then we received another large portion from Lake County specifically for that they were unable to use during that point. Right now, we're in discussions with the One Watershed, One Plan Policy Committee and all that to look to the future for 25 and beyond and do additional. So you can expect the 25 budget is actually going to be most likely elevated again to accommodate specifically for, and it's all under professional services for inspections that I will be coming back before the board with a plan of further inspections on lakeshore properties.
So this 15,000 for professional contract services, yeah, it is a reduction of 50,000 from last year, or 40,000, whatever. So that 15,000, is that still for hiring somebody to do these?
The professional services that are in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we still utilize professional services. That includes testing. Sometimes we do water testing specifically.
All right.
Sometimes we retain some contractors to help with digging holes and other things that we need professional services for. That isn't just for septic inspection. So that, though it's all targeted under professional services, the septic inspections, we don't retain people to perform actual inspections for us unless we're under grant funds for them.
That's what I wanted
Yeah.
to clarify.
Yeah.
Thank you. So there's nothing in here, so we lost the grant funding to do that, and there's nothing in this budget as proposed to go out and hire that done.
For 24, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. I wanted that.
And I will clarify, Madam Chair, Commissioner Hawkins and Commissioners as well, that with these discussions with the One Watershed, One Plan funds, if we do get funds injected into that program in 24, though we're not planning and we hadn't budgeted for it, we don't expect it, but if it does come in, it would just be, those generally end up flush. What we get in is what we pay out. And so if we do get that, I will approach the board. Everybody will be notified well in advance if we do receive any funds, because we would need motions and approvals from the board to continue on with that inspection program anyway.
So Mitch is still doing septic inspections as part of his job, regular, normal job, that we're just not gonna, we haven't budgeted for any of the special
That is
areas.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Oh, maybe my next one is for, stick around. Land Commission?
What?
The Land Commission budget. Do you have anything to do with that in your department?
No,
or-
actually, that should be
Assessor?
changed. Yeah.
that's what
Assessor
I'm,
Thompson.
that's what I just want to clarify. I was confused when I was first looking at this. Okay, who's in charge and how's this work? And I know there was discussion when we did the Parks and Trails position. So I want to, thank you for clarifying. It's Bob Thompson that'll be in next, right?
Okay. Now, the question that I would have for Brady, did that get changed? Because I know that we had Parks and Trails and Land
Yeah,
Commission.
we've changed it. We talked trails coordination.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's
And
changed. So the Land
IFS.
Commission is the Land Commission.
yeah.
Okay.
So what'd you say though?
Trails coordination.
They
Is the
had
name of
been, they had
391.
been all under the banner of Land Commissioner and such. And so because we used to have that position in the department, so we removed that, and that Land Commissioner is the Land Commission one, it's not to be confused with Parks and Trails.
Okay, so in your planning and zoning budget then,
Yes.
as far as, is that what the reason was for the decrease in I pull it up here because I don't have it. Personnel. Where's there? Yes. So you did, in the personnel services of planning and zoning, that's planning and zoning and not the Parks and Trails director?
Correct, because it's, Mitch is 50% planning and zoning and 50% the trails coordinator
Okay.
in the budget now, so.
And so that's where I would find the 50%. That's why it went up 17,000 in the, and I'm like, why would that go up so high?
Yes.
And so your personnel budget should have gone down 17,000 then.
For P and Z, 394 for P and Z, because half of that, 394, the planning and zoning included all of Mitch's position, Mitch Travis. And then now, through the board approval here, the board approved that half position for Parks and Trails. So in 394 is half the position, but half of it got moved to the Parks and Trails, or Trails Coordination. And so the Trails Coordination went up and the planning and zoning went down.
Okay. That's why it's so confusing. All these
Balance
departments and.
Yeah, there's several divisions within the land services, so, 394 is planning and zoning, but the Trails Commission is a different budget number in and of itself. But it's still all under land services.
And the assessor.
The assessor is just the land commissioner.
Yeah, the land commissioner is within the assessor's office.
Okay. I'm still confused, but that's
Yeah.
okay. I'm sorting it
That's
out.
when Lisa Kerr was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I think I'm done with you.
Just gonna wait a second.
So I am wondering about the rationale of the recorder budget and the technology fund that we have for quite a few years under budgeted the expected revenues. And our quarter three budgets showed we were already at 93% of budget. And yet we didn't increase the expected revenue there. I'm just trying to understand the rationale of continually under budgeting revenues, over budgeting expenses. I agree, that's a conservative way to do things. I'm wondering about the rationale of how many years do you do that before you make adjustments, say, oh, you know what? Maybe we should up that one.
It's a good question. And I think too, getting to the observation about the use of fund balance. I mean, we have fund balance because we have underestimated revenues and overestimated personnel expenses due to vacancies. And that is a conservative approach, and it's one that I feel very comfortable taking. And I also feel comfortable, when we get to the end of the year and we realize that we're only at 85% of personnel expenses budgeted, then it makes sense to use that and apply it to reduce the levy for the next year. I would, the suggestion about interest income remaining high through next year, that may well be true. I would feel very uncomfortable counting those chickens before they hatch. That's just, makes me a little nervous to do that. I appreciate your point. I think we need to be looking for opportunities to keep the levy as low as it can be, but I also want to be really cautious about how we do that, and that we don't start digging a hole, because we know what that looks like. Let's see, there was another point that I was going to make, and it has flown from my head, so maybe it'll come back.
Just a small point on those recorders funds. Those are carried over by statute, so they're not going into the general fund balance. We have to carry those over. So it doesn't, it makes the budget look like, oh, we came out really well, but that extra money is just is saved for particular purposes.
So it's put in here, but it can't really be used for the items listed under recorder expenses? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's just she doesn't have enough of expenses usually to cover all of the money that comes in. And so that increases that balance. But it's not the general balance that you could use for a capital improvement plan or something else. We have to figure out how to use some of the monies we receive. It took us years before we were building up a huge balance on E911 funds, because we got $72,000 a year and we didn't spend $72,000 a year. But now it's kind of overtaken us. And I don't think we're having the trouble to spend it. So it's hard to look out and say we're gonna be just building up these funds forever, because we don't know what's going to come down the pike. But at some point, but we don't have a choice as to the state says here's how you amass these funds by statute, and you have to carry them for these purposes. Whether we can figure out a way to use them right now or not, we may in the future. But we'll have to face that, legislatively if it got out of control. It hasn't. It's not that large, but I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, that's helpful.
I guess the other point to make about fund balance is that I agree with, in principle, not using fund balance for ongoing expenses. But with the caveat that it really depends on how much fund balance we're using, how that amount compares to what we have under budgeted for the current year, right? So we don't want to continually be adding to the fund balance, because that just ties up dollars that could be used for a beneficial purpose, and it also creates pressure for us to levy more, right? And so using that fund balance regularly and keeping it at a point that is consistent with the targets that the Budget Advisory Committee set is really what we need to be shooting for, and not going below that target, but also making sure that we're not going way above it, right? Because that doesn't help anything. So I agree with you in principle, and I think using fund balance for ongoing expenses is generally something to avoid. But I also think that, when we can look at the personnel budget for the current year and say, oh, we've over budgeted this expense, and we know that we're going to be spending much less than that, I think it's totally appropriate to apply that to the next year's operating expenses. So.
Commissioner White?
But I have a question. What if we get two people that come in and say, we want to be deputies for Cook County?
Well, that'd be a great problem to have.
And then where do we get the money from if it's not budgeted for those two positions for next year? Say one shows up in April and the other one shows up in June or when?
We're talking about harvesting the savings from the current year, because those positions were vacant.
And so, okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
But then when we budget for the next year, we'll keep those numbers in place.
Correct.
For potential.
Correct. I mean, the goal is to be fully staffed.
Oh,
of
yes.
course.
Oh, yes.
So one thing I said I would bring back after AMC is an update on commissioner salaries, just to throw more into the mix. And we were able to get an average. I will say not every county in the state of Minnesota reported to AMC their commissioner salary, so this is, the majority of them. But the average is $32,853. And if we were to look in the same fashion that we did for employees of the county, looking at a 95% of our peers, we'd be looking at $31,247. So I've done a couple different calculations, and one thought is that we could take some of that one-time money, the interest that we earned, and we could get ourselves up to the 2023 average. We don't have statistics on this upcoming year. And we could, do it with an expenditure a little less than $20,000 and be up to average. We could also look at doing that over a 2-year period, because we've also talked about those small steps. So I just want to share the information I said I'd come back with and see what you all think. Commissioner White?
In other counties, do the commissioners have their health insurance paid for?
Yes.
So that's across the
Yeah,
board.
and again, health insurance is really difficult to compare because
Oh.
the policies are different. It's kind of like apples and oranges. Yeah. Per diems are different. There are per diems that are 125 a day, higher than ours. There are per diems that are lower. And what I try to do is look at the location of those counties. And I believe Kuchiching had the highest per diem, but they're far away from everything. I think they had the 160. So, there are reasons that the per diems are where they are. But anyway, wanted to toss that out and just kind of see what people think. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would advocate just for that incremental increase again. I think that's a more prudent approach. I think it's still very important, and so I would advocate for the 3,600 a year increase. And my target isn't necessarily the state average. My target is based off of the salaries that were set in 2003 and then
Right.
The CPI index for inflation, just getting up to that.
So your figure of 3,600, if we wanted to make our commissioners' salaries state average and do it this year, it would require $3,647.69.
I'm sorry, what?
So to come up to 95% of the average,
Oh, I
which
see.
is what we did with other employees,
interesting.
that would be $3,647.69. I anticipated you'd bring that up.
Interesting, yeah.
So that would be a grand total for all 5 commissioners of $18,238.45.
So we'd be 95% average.
Yep. And then potentially next year, we could get up to average. Thoughts by other commissioners?
Commissioner, does that include the cost of living?
That I've already calculated the cost of living that we had, 3.5, so that's in addition to the 3.5.
Not to, thank you, Chair, not to sidetrack us too much, but the Chippewa County's salary caught my eye. 2023, it says 11,692. In 2022 was 25,334. Was there any, I didn't follow up with that.
I did
was just
not
really
follow up with
curious,
them.
but that was included in the average, I
Right.
presume?
And just so everyone is aware, these figures are going to be available through our HR directors in the future, so we don't have to go hunting them down. They are provided to our HR directors, so they'll have a list of everything for all counties, which is really nice. Then they don't have to field 87 phone calls.
Sure, yeah.
You know.
I kind of dropped the ball. I wanted to follow up with that salary, just see what the deal was. That's pretty interesting.
Madam Chair, are you saying, just to clarify, that the 3,600 includes the cost of living? You put all that together or not?
No, our salary for next year with the cost of living would be $27,599.31, and then in addition to that, if we added $3,647.69, we would be at last year's average.
Okay.
And that's just so close to the 3,600 we had talked about. That's why I brought it up.
Okay.
It's $50 a commissioner more.
Well, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to increase commissioner salaries by I mean, we already did the motion for the cost of living, so
Right, that's
that
done.
stands. But for an additional $3,647.69.
Is there support?
Could we have a comment?
Surely.
How's all this going to fit into looking at our levy and our budget? It's going to be more.
So I mean, the answer to that depends on the other question about how we're using that
The
interest
500,000.
income.
Right.
So
that's
there
why
are
I
a bunch of
thought,
moving
yeah.
parts here that y'all are going to have to kind of figure out to put together the final levy.
Well, thank you, Chair. And Commissioner Starley, to your question, this isn't going to be exactly, but just from what Brady said, $54,000 is about 0.45% of the levy. If we increase the salaries by $3,600 for each of us, that's roughly $20,000. I think it was 19 or something when you add the tax. So that would be roughly, and this is conservative, but 0.2%. Is that track? You weren't listening, sorry.
I didn't do the percentage.
I was just referencing, the 54,000 would translate into 0.45%.
Okay.
And so then I, just was trying to give some perspective on what that total wage change would be. And I think before you were saying.
If you're saying the 19,000? you're
Yeah,
talking?
yeah.
I'm going to just, while we're waiting for him to do his number, I will not support another increase for our salaries at this time. I think we're already at a 12% levy increase, technically. And I don't know that that this is the best time to do it. Totally respect that, we disagree on that, that's fine. I just thought I should give a heads up.
0.16.
0.16% increase in the total levy.
Okay. And like I say, my thought was to not impact the levy, to take it out of the 500,000.
But then are you giving it back next year?
Right,
No.
it's all.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
about balancing out now and the future. I agree with that. Yeah, definitely. And again, I'm looking at just, we've gotten so far behind, there's never a good time for us to increase our salaries. And it's a hard thing to give yourself an increase. And the public knows that, they understand that. But it's hard for all of us to do it. And I want to do it for future commissioners. So we have a motion on the table. I will second that motion. Any further discussion? Commissioner Wells.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Yeah, last year, I remember the discussion pretty well, and last year was quoted to be the worst possible time to increase commissioner salaries, but every year it is not a good time. And so, there's been discussions about decisions in the past or made in the past, and we have to, whereas I'm trying to quote-unquote correct the commissioner's salary, not being adjusted for inflation. Over the last 20 years, my mentality is it's similar to our deferred maintenance. Questions were made, or decisions were made in the past to not address our maintenance needs. And now we're playing catch-up. And it's not that I'll say, no, those decisions were made in the past, I'm not going to deal with them now. It's that our job is to try to, catch up or repair anything that we're able to. If we see discrepancies, if we see ways that we can operate better, if we see over-budgeted, or rather under-budgeted revenues consistently, it's our job to try to find that balance and get something more accurate. And so just solely based on inflation in the last 20 years, it's something that we can identify. It's quantitative and anecdotally, talking to other commissioners around the state as well as community members about it, I feel like there's ample support for it. I hear the concern about the levy increase, and none of us want to pay more taxes, but I also want to build a system that's going to work better moving forward. So I think this is another correction in the right direction. It's not going to solve anything, but step by step, I'd like to.
And again, this is 95% of similar counties, just like we did for our employees. So it's not still the state average. Commissioner Storley had a question, and then Commissioner White.
Well, okay, so if we decide that we're going to vote this in, and Brady quoted, we could bring the levy down to 4.5% using part of the 500,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And the rest of the 500,000, where would, we would put that into capital improvements? Where would that go?
Correct.
That's what the committee was
And
hoping we'd do.
Yeah.
Because I'm not getting very good vibes from the legislature,
Yeah.
you know. So I think we need every penny we can get for that. So, have to be optimistic. Senator Hochschild is in our corner, but, you know,
Yeah.
it's gonna be.
And just to clarify Commissioner Storley's comment, we did get feedback from Senator Hochschild at the meetings that we had with him and Representative Scraba back in October, that our bonding request is far and above what was any awards that were made last year during a record year of bonding. So I think your comment, Commissioner Storley, is accurate. I think it is very unlikely that we would see that full request awarded. But he also did indicate that having a request that is more consistent with some of the requests that were awarded last year is probably more realistic. The other thing to remember about that is we have not, Cook County has never in anyone's memory gone to the legislature for bonding assistance. So I think there's still cause for optimism, but I agree with you that the likelihood of that, getting that full award is probably very low.
Commissioner White.
And I would like to address, since the past commissioners in their roles decided that they would not take pay increases because they were doing their jobs and were comfortable to do their jobs at the pay that they were receiving. We are not like a building that has a leaky roof. Any of us sitting here are elected. This is an option to be in this position. We don't have to be here. We can go get, I mean, there are jobs galore. I mean, carpenters are 60, 65 bucks an hour, depending on where you are. There are jobs in this community. So this is where we choose to be. And my belief is that the county government is only here because we have people that live in the county. We provide services for the people in the county. So to try to bring salary up because it wasn't brought up in the past for whatever reasons, I don't believe that's a valid argument.
What's the counter?
I'm not in favor of increasing at this moment in time until we've got this Justice Center of $16 million on the horizon. And I don't know how that's gonna get paid for. I mean, Brady does. There's bonding and there are those things, but I just believe that we started this year. We agreed on a cost of living for all elected officials. And this was year one, and we'll take it from there and see what happens with our expenditures next year. And that's where I'm at.
Commissioner Mills.
It's year one for you, Commissioner, but for some of us, it's beyond year one. This is kind of an ongoing thing. It's kind of my point. If it's not ever addressed, it will always be a thing. And so we need to address it. And frankly, all of us sitting here are able to make that choice, but there are members in our community who could not make the choice because of the pay. And so if we keep pay low, it is suppressing representation in our county. And that's what I'm trying to overcome, is to be able to allow anyone to be a commissioner. And I think that's the right thing to do. Yeah, if I was in it for the money, I would not be sitting here whatsoever. I scramble to make money outside, and there's work coming on my ears, you know. But having a job as well as this job, I challenge anyone to have that regular thing. The point was made that there's flexibility within this job because we set our own schedule, but it's nothing like setting my own schedule. I'm self-employed. Like, that's the ultimate setting the schedule here. I gotta be here, you know, Tuesdays or any other scheduled meeting and work my job around that. So it's quite a juggling act, and I'm very proud to be here. I'm very grateful that the trust of the community has put me here. And with that trust, I'm trying to carry things forward so that we can involve the community more and more. It's part of, I think, developing healthy relationships and a healthy organization.
And I would like to add that I believe you are very capable of juggling. Very capable. Anybody that has lived in Cook County for a while knows how to juggle. Things happen, things don't happen, and you roll with it and you succeed. And I believe anyone sitting here for any duration has done that.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner
So I
Sterling.
guess I just want to, I don't want to harp at this forever, but just to understand that we started off at 9%. And I wanted that because we didn't know if there was unforeseen things that could come up. Then we went down to 6.47. And by using 54,000 out of the 500,000, that brings our levy to 4.5%. And we have taxpayers that
I'm
need
sorry.
every percentage. Is that right?
No, I'm sorry.
That's 200.
I'm emailing while I'm listening, sorry. But the 54,000 brings us down to 6.
6.
And it would take 235,000 to get us to 4.4.
Okay.
Correct.
That's our 30-year average?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so where are we with taking 235 out then?
Well, first let's kind of look at our motion,
Right.
get that taken care of. Do we have other comments about the commissioner's salary?
Well, I think this plays into it, though. This is, I don't want to vote on something
Right,
until I
okay.
understand what this is all about for the levy.
So we have to choose, do we want this to come through levy dollars, or do we want it to come out of the 500,000?
Madam Chair, I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Motion withdrawn.
Okay.
Commissioner?
I have to get back to the overall levy discussion, and I want to thank Attorney Hicken for responding to my emails. That was trying to read through all that information you gave last night, and I do appreciate it. My question is about the assistant accountant attorney that's in our budget line item here. And the job description for our existing county attorney hasn't been updated since '21.
It's currently being updated.
It's current, and it is most likely, probably going to have an increase in grade like our other positions. So I'm wondering when this personnel services projection for a second county attorney, and we had talked about a county attorney 1 and a county attorney 2. I don't know where that discussion has landed. So how did we come up with the actual cost projection? Was it based on the grade 220 as currently, or did we bump that up?
It was the current grade at step 1.
At step 1, which we very rarely hire at a step 1. So I'm just wondering how much cushion was put into that to cover the expectation that we would hire somebody probably more than that. It will cost more than what this is showing.
Madam Chair, I think Brady and I can both take a crack at answering these questions. So when I submitted my budget request, we had not yet updated job descriptions and created a job description for this entry-level attorney position that I'm requesting the board add. So we went with what, the current class for the current assistant county attorney. So we've been back and forth a couple of times with DDA with new job descriptions for both. We do expect that the entry-level position will go up one step from where the current ACA is currently classed, and that the ACA 2 position, so the more senior assistant county attorney, would probably go up 2 steps, or that would be the recommendation of DDA.
Okay.
And as I put in my email to you, that's consistent with what's happening around the state with county attorneys' offices. Since the legislature increased the pay scale for assistant public defenders far above what many, especially outstate assistant county attorneys are making, we've seen a flow from the prosecution side to the public defense side. Our association is keeping track of it, and there's been something like 25 assistant county attorneys and county attorneys from outstate Minnesota who are going to the bigger salaries with the state PD's office. So now there's this shift for ACAs. And so DDA, our firm, is aware of that and has the pay schedule for PDs. And I think that is in part what led to the increase, the recommended increase in pay. So I don't know the answer to your question about whether there was any cushion allowed. And those job descriptions probably won't be in front of the board until January for the board to decide on the class.
I mean, I didn't think about it, but often people don't get hired on day one. And if it's, any length of time after January 1, there's your, often is the cushion.
That's good.
Budgets.
Thank you. Thank you.
We did put in the highest health insurance. That's a significant, it's about 7,000 something for a single and almost 17,000 for family. So that's, it's not
So
a
you-
cushion because it could happen, but.
You're saying
you know,
only single
you have
people
to
should
pick one.
apply.
No, it's just what do you put in the budget?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and that,
Number,
I
high
agree,
number,
that
yeah.
is the conservative,
Yeah.
correct way to budget, I understand that. But I guess for my fellow commissioners to understand already in this budget, our cushion is gone. So when you talk about where should we as a board decide where taxpayer dollars get spent? Should it be, we have lots of requests here, lots of decisions to make. And that's a substantial ongoing, that will never get cheaper, ever. And I understand, that's the cost of doing business now.
We face a lot of legal risks, right? In the work that you all do and the work that I do, we need to have counsel available to consult with on a regular basis. And so, yes, it's a new cost in the budget, but it also helps mitigate risk.
And it's clearly, the increase in workload here in Cook County is happening elsewhere as well. It's not just Cook County. You know, we talked a lot about budgets at AMC, and I just know from the work that I do and my interaction with the county attorney's office, given the workload, it slows down the responsiveness that we have to our immediate needs, and I just strongly feel we need this position.
So,
Commissioner?
in light of our space problem, where would this position work from?
Madam Chair, or,
It depends. It depends on how things proceed with the judicial center, right? I mean, the county attorney's office, if we move forward on that project, the county attorney's office would move over to where the LEC is now. In the short term, there would be space in the existing county attorney's office for us to create a new workstation.
Madam Chair, we have a plan for that. We have some office furniture designed to move our administrative staff paralegal from her office into the main office, and then it'll be split between our administrative staff. Her old office will go to the new attorney.
Will that require walls being put up, or like has done?
We've got, I can't remember what our estimate came out as, but we've got some like cubicle style walls only, yeah.
All right.
It's far less than $10,000.
And thinking about ongoing and space needs, because we don't know if we're getting a judicial center yet, how that would work. Was the option, especially with the lack of lawyers right now, wanting to work in the public sector, and we do contract out for other things, for specialties, what was the rationale for not maybe hiring out for a part-time, do these jobs for us so that we can free up time to do this?
I did consider that and reject it for a few reasons. First of all, in order for an attorney to, if somebody's going to have a full income with a half-time salary from the county attorneys, they would have to also carry a private caseload on the side. And in a small community like ours, and considering the ethical duties that an attorney has with conflicts between clients, it would be very difficult, in my opinion, to do both. It happens around the state. My preference would be an attorney who's dedicated to the county 100% of their, time is dedicated to the county. I do believe there's enough work there, and for a variety of reasons, I do. Another reason I rejected that option is because of how difficult it is to recruit attorneys, assistant county attorneys right now. Obviously, we've got already difficulty recruiting public employees in general. I know of many, many vacancies throughout the state that have stayed vacant for assistant county attorneys, and I don't believe a half-time position is going to necessarily have somebody moving up here. I don't know that they could afford that. I don't know that it would be a draw. And I certainly want an assistant county attorney who's living in the community and not somebody who's doing the job remotely. I think that this work is it has to be so connected to community, and you really have to be invested in this place to be making the right decisions for justice here. So.
Thank you. And I just want to state that sometimes when I sit in this chair and ask questions publicly that maybe have been asked in emails or outside of this room sometimes, it's because the public wants to know those answers. They want to know the rationale. And so it's not good enough, I believe, as a county commissioner, to just say, well, we looked that over and this is how we're going to vote. And I think that this discussion is healthy for our community to hear what is the work of a county commissioner? How do you come to the decisions that you come to What's the rationale behind it? And it's not meant to be attacking of anybody, any department, but it's to let the public know. I remember when I was sitting over there in that position, being sometimes kind of confused because I knew the county commissioners maybe knew the answer, they'd heard the rationale, but they didn't share it with the public, what was back, how they came to that decision. So that's part of why I ask the questions in public. And it's not to be attacking of anybody. So I can get off my soapbox now.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Sorley.
Commissioner Hawkins, I agree with you. That's why I'm trying to get to the levy, and that's why I'm trying to say what we are proposing that's fair for us to be increasing a small amount each year isn't because we are sitting here and saying, well, I need a little more money for my work. The workload that's increased over the last year of my 9 years is exponential. I never realized how much it keeps increasing all the time. And so that's why I'm just trying to sort all this out for us and for the public who are listening before we vote, because the vote is going to be really important. So where are we?
Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Yeah, so getting down to the big levy and that $500,000, I really appreciate the work that the Budget Committee does and the dedication and the attention to details and going through line by line. And do not take their recommendations lightly. Years past, I've advocated strongly for not budgeting below our long-term average, because then it's basically we're gonna have to budget above it. And so if we can try to maintain a steady course, I think is the best thing. So I like the idea of budgeting down to the average, right? Because that will, in theory, bring more stability. However, my concern is we have identified significant capital needs and costs, and the interest rates are not in our favor to borrow. So it would make more sense in my mind to spend spend down the money in those capital projects. So I'm open to using some of the $500,000 to bring that levy down, because I think that would help our community. But I just am wary of going too far, because then we're just gonna have to borrow that money for whatever capital plan that we have, or not whatever capital expense that, or how we're gonna manage that bonding. So also realizing that's a drop in the bucket, but it all adds up, especially when we're talking interest over years. And so I don't have a firm suggestion for that spending and money to bring it down, but I'm very open to that.
I like the thought of using a small amount of that 500,000, again, because we have huge needs, and potentially bringing it down to 6%, which, if I'm correct, would be a use of $54,000.
And then putting the rest towards deferred maintenance?
Yes. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. I don't mean to make waves or cause issues, but I would also be open to going lower, lowering it down to 5.5%, using about a fifth of that. I think Brady said it was $112,000. And, you know, I think that could really help our community too. But I mean, I'm sure you all realize what I'm saying about my discomfort with borrowing then,
Yes.
because that's just,
I think we all feel
we're just
that way.
paying banks then, and we need to be paying our community.
Commissioner White, what are you thinking?
Hold on, I agree with Commissioner Mills. So anyway, I think I would go down so we get it to 5% for our taxpayers, or
5.5.
5.5 to make it better that way, but the rest going towards the deferred maintenance for our buildings.
How are you feeling about that,
How are you
Commissioner
feeling?
Storley? I see a
I'm
nod.
feeling better.
All right,
Yes.
Commissioner Mills.
So this 500,000 was not incorporated into our financial management plan or our, right, so this is this is a bonus.
Bonus.
And I guess I would just appreciate any further financial perspective, longer-term financial perspective as far as that balance between current levy and spending down the bonding.
Yeah, so Brady and I are scheduled to speak with Bruce again Thursday afternoon. So we can have more information, I expect, by next Tuesday's business meeting.
I had an opportunity to speak with Bruce at AMC, and that was a good conversation. It was great. Introduced to one of his partners, and it was just really nice to see him in a different setting.
Madam Chair, I heard Commissioner White say 5 or 5.5%. So
5.5 was in reference to what Commissioner Mills said,
So we're
which is
spending down
$112,000.
$112,000 and putting then the $388,000 towards
Yep.
deferred maintenance.
Correct. Commissioner Hawkins, how are you feeling?
I was willing to go to 5.
I'll go to 5.
I don't know. There's this balance. There was disagreement at the Budget Committee. Mainly me against everybody else. No. Because they wanted to use that money.
They talked
And I wanted
about-
to save it.
yeah.
But subsequent conversations with some of those members privately, I'm wishy-washy on this one. And I understand the perspective, we've got the money, we didn't budget the money. Help the taxpayers who are going through inflation things right now. Gas, food, housing. So, I was willing to go down to the 5%.
What's the amount?
That's $170,000.
170.
Commissioner Mills.
And I can be supportive of that too. I don't have a strong feeling. It's just, that balance. And I really appreciate that perspective, Commissioner Hawkins, with how the conversation went and the dynamics. And I don't need specifics or names or anything, but I would be very interested in just kind of what changed your mind in that direction, because that's what I'm struggling with is, lowering the levy versus our upcoming costs. And was there anything in particular like,
crystal ball.
Yes, right. No, it wasn't all of the people, but there was some of the people talked to me about being sensitive to those who are struggling. We know we have wealthy people here that can afford whatever. We have others that are on fixed incomes, and to be cognizant that maybe this is the appropriate time to use unexpected funds for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Auditor Powers, I'm going to ask you a question about, and I know you budget conservatively, I do as well on a personal level, but what do you feel in the long term would be the best for Cook County in terms? See, I said,
Big picture.
philosophical, big picture. You've been here 23 years. You have the best perspective of anybody in the room on this.
30 years.
30 years. Oh, bad Commissioner.
You're talking lowering the bond
Yeah.
cost versus
Versus
saving
the
on
levy.
the levy.
I'm thinking about 0.5% and what that means to everybody here.
And Madam Chair, before Auditor Powers answers, you know, he is does such a wonderful job of staying out of politics for being our auditor.
does.
And so I'm wary of you stepping in it.
Yeah, and I
don't
can
feel
withdraw
that.
the question, you
I
know.
don't feel that. For a question like this, but I don't really have a good, solid sense of this, of what the interest rates are gonna be
Yeah.
when we issue bonds, how many bond issuance we're going to have, and the size of them. So it's hard.
Yeah.
What I would do is spend about an hour and just, and talk with Bruce and do a bunch of scenarios, and I haven't done all that, to give you a good answer, or let's say a better
But
answer.
it still doesn't obviously predict, you know,
Yeah.
the future for us. Well, I think the
Yeah.
good news is for our community, regardless of our decision today, it's a better decision
Right.
than we thought we were even going to have the option of making.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to be able to do that for our community. And I want to thank you and Administrator Yorkie for really digging in and looking at everything in a real detailed way to get that down. Commissioner Mills.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to set our levy increase to 5.16%. The .16 is a reflection of the commissioner's salary increase that I was advocating for, and also using the 500,000 to lower things down to the 5% level, so that'd be 170,000. I think that is clear or straightforward, unless, okay.
Attorney Hicken.
There's a motion on the floor. Point of order.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a second to that motion?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Attorney Hicken.
My question is, does this motion include in it the setting of the salaries for commissioners? So you're setting the salaries for the commissioners, and you are setting the budget?
This is setting the budget. This is not, it assumes the increase in the salaries, but it was just the levy amount.
So we still need that.
I just
you'd
want to
have
make sure when we're setting the levy that we cover that. It's not
Okay.
just like, and then, you know.
Yeah, so you could make that, if you said it this way, you could make that decision today to make another change to or next week.
I'm so confused.
But,
So my intention was to, there were concerns about the commissioner's salary in relation to our overall levy. And so we've had some good conversation about our overall levy. And I don't know that was consensus for sure, but I was getting the feeling that we were looking at getting down to 5%, using some of that 500,000, 170,000 of it to get down to 5%. But I also wanted to include the 0.16%, which is the 19,000 for commissioner increase. We have not yet voted to increase, but this motion includes a budget for that
For that.
increase. So we also, if we're going to do that, we also have to vote on that increase.
Correct.
Oops. Madam Chair, may I?
Yes,
I'm just wondering if it is advantageous both for the board and I think for the public to break out those motions. So there's one question about how are we spending the unanticipated interest income? And it sounds like there's agreement that we want to apply 170 of it, 170,000 to the levy to bring that down to approximately 5%, and then to use the other $330,000 to reduce the need for bonding for the CIP. And so I'm wondering if it would be good just to have that be a discrete motion before we then move on to other questions.
That was my intention. I mean, that
Okay.
was, I thought.
Okay.
But I guess I
Right,
didn't
so
say
sta-
the remainder.
State it clearly, just so we're all and the public clear on your motion. So it was 5.16.
Yeah, a levy increase of 5.16%. And so that is, that's basically the end of the motion. But to-
Which
but to
would
clarify-
use the 170,000
Yes.
from that surplus, okay.
And I'm sorry that I didn't explicitly say the remainder would go towards our capital improvement plan, but that was my intention. And I'm comfortable amending my motion to include that designation as well, if there's support there.
So the way the motion reads is it's a 5.16% levy with 170,000 coming from the surplus and the remainder to go to the CIP. And Commissioner Storley, do you support that? All right. So that's the motion on the table. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, can Brady confirm that those numbers align? The 5.16, if we're using the 170 toward the levy?
It all aligns, but I'm going to add 19,000 to the general fund expenses without a purpose at this moment in order to make it 5.16.
Right.
Okay.
Roger that.
So we should.
Want to do another amendment to your amendment?
Yeah, we should, I should probably withdraw again, but we should, kind of what I was picking up there is we should determine the commissioner's salary first and then vote on the overall levy. Is
Be
that-
clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to address it and address the bigger picture. Yeah, okay. Madam Chair, I'd like to withdraw my motion again.
Motion withdrawn.
3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah,
All right.
okay, so Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to increase the commissioner's salary, $3,600 for next year.
All right, we have motion for an increase of 3,600. Is there support? Support?
And that's in addition to the 3.5%.
Correct. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve our levy increase at 5.16%, using $170,000 from our unanticipated interest income to lower that to 5, and then using the remainder into our capital improvement, to designate it in our capital improvement spending
Thank you.
plan.
Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support to set the levy at 5.16 with 170,000 surplus, and coming from that surplus and the remainder to cover the CIP. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2. All right. So next item on our agenda is a professional services agreement with CR-BPS.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This proposal is to provide maintenance of the VFA database. So when we did the data collection last year for the CIP, all of the data that we collected was entered into this capital improvement software that CR-BPS uses. It's a proprietary database, and when CR-BPS provided the proposal, excuse me, it indicated that it would be able to provide ongoing services in support of the data maintenance. And so this is something that we have anticipated. The thing about this proposal is we use their services as needed, which means that they're not billing us every month if we don't use their services. So they only make changes to the database if they're directed by us to do so. So in that way, we maintain control over how much we're spending the amount of the proposal is not to exceed $20,000. It could be less than that, it could be close to that. It really depends on how things proceed in the coming year. One thing I will say about the relationship that we've developed with CR-BPS, they have done exemplary work for us. They've done a lot of great data collection. They provided us with really great advice on how to prioritize projects. And so the trust level that I have with their folks, I mean, they've demonstrated their value to our organization, in my opinion. And I think the commissioners who've dealt with them in the open house meetings that we've had have found them to be very competent and capable. So I feel really comfortable with bringing this proposal forward. I think we need to do it. We need to maintain. It's not just that we've collected the data and now we own it and we don't do anything with it. It has to be maintained so that our CIP stays current and we can track progress toward the completion of goals. So that is the proposal, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
So I have a question. Can we have this agreement run from January 1st to December 31st, so it's for 2024, since half of the December month is gone?
Yes, I'm sorry.
All right.
Yeah. The proposal is from January 1,
Okay,
2024.
all right. I apologize. I seem to think there was a December date on there, so.
Yeah,
all right.
it should be January 1, 2024 through December 31st, 2024.
Thank you.
That's different than the project understanding in there, so that'd be
Okay.
good. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions? Commissioner Mills?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What's their hourly rate?
Those are detailed in the proposal. So, and it depends on which staff member is doing the work.
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah.
okay,
So page 3 of the
got it.
document.
Go in there.
Commissioner Hawkins?
I thought our MIS department was going to be
Oh.
updating the system, and we
Great.
weren't going to have to contract out for this.
Great question. So what Kyle Oberg, our GIS analyst, has done for us is create an app that our maintenance staff can use to collect data. And so that's what they're doing in the field when they're doing repairs to boilers and what have you. They collect that data and they send it to CR-BPS, but our maintenance staff does not maintain VFA. And so, and that's I guess one thing I didn't mention is that I did check with Chad Rickle to see how much it would cost for us to get our own VFA license if we ever had the in-house expertise to do that work ourselves. That would be, not only would we need a license to do it so that we could use the software, but we'd also need to have the in-house expertise to do that work. He said that a license, depending on the size of the organization, would run about $10,000 to $15,000. So it would cost us to get into that game if that's what we decided to do. So Commissioner, to your point, the app that Kyle developed for us, that's to collect data, to record it, and to provide it to CR-BPS.
Okay, I'm sorry, still processing here. So I'm feeling a little bait and switch with CR-BPS. You have our data that if we ever want to keep it updated, we have to pay you money to do it.
No bait and switch, and that's a really unfair term to use.
Okay,
I think
but
for a company that's done really great work for us and has given us no reason to question their integrity or honesty. They have, no, there's no misrepresentation here. They indicated, and we understood, I understood from the beginning of the arrangement that they would be providing that data maintenance service for us ongoing.
So, okay. In the administration budget, there's $20,000 for professional contract services.
Correct.
That's the only thing we're going to use that line item for then?
That's correct.
Nothing else for the rest of the
Correct.
year? Okay.
Yep.
And this is going to be an ongoing expense as long as we want to keep track of
It will
our...
be an ongoing expense. One thing I would offer is that as we move forward, I think there are some changes that we need to make organizationally to be better positioned to to manage our buildings, to become more technologically oriented in how we do that work. And so we have, I foresee changes in the next, 1 to 3 years that are going to require us to move more in that direction. And so it's conceivable that at some point, we might be doing that work ourselves. But in the short term, we don't have the capacity, we don't have the expertise. And so this arrangement is necessary to help us maintain the information.
And so I just want to be clear, I think that's where my confusion comes in, because when we voted for this, when we approved this project, my understanding was, yes, they'll do the work, the heavy lifting, putting it all, but we will take it over. And now I'm with this saying, oh, no, we're not. So there is that disconnect of what I thought I was voting on and what we're
Okay.
getting.
So if you look at the proposal that they initially provided us, that the ongoing maintenance was listed as a separate service. And so I don't know.
Which we did not choose at that time, is my understanding, because we can do it ourselves, is the way it was presented.
Yeah, but I mean, we can't, and I don't think I ever represented to this board that we would be able to do that ourselves.
Yeah, my recollection is that we talked about, getting our maintenance staff on board to be able to collect information, that's kind of the first step. But, maybe 5 years from now, we will have a position in the building, or it will be part of someone's position that will be able to do that. So that's how I was looking.
The other piece of this that I think is really important is that as we move forward on the implementation of the CIP, CR-BPS has a lot of expertise in energy efficiency, and as we are implementing projects, they will also be able to provide a second set of eyes to help us review the work that's going on to catch up on deferred maintenance, and even provide potentially some consulting on the judicial center if we start moving in that direction. So I mean, again, the value that they provided to us and the value that I see in this proposal is pretty clear. And, if we were not to enter into this agreement, we would lose the ability, at least in the short term, to maintain the data.
Commissioner White?
So am I understanding that their conclusions, we don't have access to them?
No, we do. We own the data.
So we own that, so could we not, we have some pretty talented computer people around here. Could they not create a software program that takes that data?
Not with existing resources.
We'd have to hire staff.
And also, I mean,
There's probably a copyright thing or something, but if we're taking our information, this is our building, and it's like, this is wrong, and this is wrong, our maintenance staff is inputting, this is what we've done, we fixed this one and this one. I just.
I mean, so, Commissioner, your question is essentially, couldn't we do this ourselves, right?
Right.
Using IT, I mean, we could, right? We could, and I wouldn't, I mean, there are a number of different, like, off-the-shelf softwares that you can use for capital improvement planning. VFA is one of them, there are others. We could, I mean, if the board said, we don't want to work with CR-BPS, we want to do this ourselves, we'd have to buy the software, we'd have to budget for personnel to do that work, to get the training, to use it. We could do that. I think this represents a much more affordable and easy in the short-term way of getting that done.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. So this is just for 1 year, and I see it as a transition. I think it would be great if we could do this in-house, and I'd like to see us move in that direction, but for the time being, I think this makes a whole lot of sense. Appreciate the scope of work and the professionalism that CR-BPS. There was also a member of the public attending when I attended the information session, and it was interesting because they kind of we're dealing with similar systems as far as the reporting and record keeping, and was pretty interested in VFA and what CR-BPS, how they used it, and it was just good to hear that other perspective too about the other ways, and they were, I think, pretty impressed with CR-BPS's system and how that works, but, and it's just as we need it, correct? We're not straight up paying them 20 grand, we're, you know, whenever there's, you know,
When not to
add
exceed.
energy conservation opportunity requirements or verification of energy performance, and we'll have our boots on the ground here collecting data, but then as far as managing the data, that's where CR-BPS comes in, and if we want information from them about, run a report on such and such building or such and such system, or when's the next time in their replacement schedule, you know, how should we prioritize this replacement schedule, that kind of stuff, right? I was hoping for this, I'm very happy for this, because I was hoping for something like this for part of our discussion too, with potential expansions or changes, and so that's not in the scope of work. That would be my only question is, are we trying not to have scope creep, or could there be advantages there? Or?
The scope of work detailed in the proposal is, services include but are not limited to. So, I mean, we could
Sure.
use them for additional consulting services.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If we have budget to do that.
Sure.
And it makes sense for the organization.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yep.
Other questions or concerns?
Thank you.
Attorney Hickman.
Did I hear that the project understanding is not drafted consistent with what you believe?
The date
the
needs to
arrangement?
change.
Just the date.
It's just the date, okay.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that any motion suggest a change in that date
Yep.
to be accurate.
I have a question. So when they're going to do verification of building energy performance conditions, is this, that's after we address, we've got a building that needs insulation, it's got too much. So they come on site after the work is done or while the work is being done to assure that we're getting the right amount of blown-in insulation or polyurethane, whatever it is.
Yes.
So they will come here to do that on site as the work is getting done?
They could do that if directed by us to do so.
Because that, I think about the scheduling, would be pretty interesting. I mean, just to get someone to come and do it here, and then to get someone from outside to be able to coordinate their schedules, to come and it seems like if a professional is hired to do installation, and we've got locals that do this. Can't we trust that any of the work that we get done is being done to code, being done properly, that,
These are just examples of the kind of work that they
Okay.
could do for us.
If we
It's
felt
not-
that we were
If we
not-
insulate a building, we're not going to immediately call CR-BPS and say, you have to check this out.
okay.
We could do that if we wanted to, but
Our 20,000 would be gone pretty quickly if we called them all the
Yeah.
time. I think we have to pick and
Right,
choose how we
okay.
use this
Well,
service. Yeah. Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Yeah, my interpretation of the verification of building energy performance conditions was, say, there's an air handler that is making noise and identified as the culprit for inefficiency, and then we fix that. Then, they could verify that it was indeed that air handler that was doing it, and versus some other part of the system. Not so much as you guys insulated this wrong, but, I guess that could fall under it too, but yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking of more of that technical, trickier stuff, so I'm pretty excited for this. It really leverages the work that Brian and crew are doing and continues on with our management of all of our capital needs. It's progress, professional progress.
Other questions, comments? Not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve
Thank you,
the professional
Commissioner.
services agreement with CR-BPS.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there support? I'll support. Any further discussion? Commissioner White?
I believe that
And
it's a good stopgap, or it's a good transition to use, but I think that we really need to move forward with being able to do this ourselves in not too short of a period of time. Because the buildings are not going away, they're going to continue to need to be taken care of, and we have the talent. I mean, they're out there, so, and it's gonna cost money one way or the other, but I just see that having it in-house at some point is actually, it's better to own a piece of equipment than to have to keep renting it. So, and this is something we would use all the time. It's not like a one-off deal.
All right. Administrator Yard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, I think that's frequently true. I think there are also times where contracting for services makes a lot of sense. When you don't want to budget for a new position, when you don't have the expertise in-house. This arrangement for us right now makes perfect sense. And if we do move in a direction in the future of, changing the kind of expertise that we have in our maintenance or facilities department, then I agree with you. I mean, I think there'd be a lot of benefits to having that work happening in-house. But there would be some expenses that would come along with that we're going to have to take a look at, so.
So we have a motion, and go ahead, Commissioner Rose.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. I didn't hear the clarification with the dates in the motion, though, so I just wanted to.
That's what I'm coming back to.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
okay.
So we have a motion to execute a one-year agreement with CR-BPS running from January 1st to December 31st of 2024 to maintain the CIP database and track progress of CIP implementation in an amount not to exceed $20,000. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Right. A few more things today. The Strategic Planning Steering Committee met last week to debrief on the open house sessions that we had with staff in November. Where we are right now is we are using the feedback that we got from staff to refine the objectives that we have identified. One big piece of advice that came back from those open house sessions is that the plan is probably a little too ambitious and that it places too much work on people who are already have very full plates, including myself and the HR director. So what we have assigned as homework to the members of the steering committee is to take another look at the objectives document and make sure that we want their recommendations on how to kind of right-size this to match the resources that we have available. And so that work is ongoing. The goal is to have the goals and objectives refined by the first part of next month. We're going to meet again and kind of do some fine-tuning on that, and then use what we have to kind of develop a final report that we're then going to share with staff one last time before we bring it to the board for approval, probably in February or March. So I feel really good about the process that we've run so far. There's been a lot of staff input. We didn't have as many folks show up at the open house sessions as I'd hoped we would, nor did we have a lot of feedback on the online survey. And so we are going to be asking folks who haven't responded already to provide additional feedback as we're doing the refinement of the table, the objectives. And again, hoping to complete it the first part of next year and then begin implementation. And so the implementation piece of it, of course, is the most important part. I mean, it's important to have a good plan, but it's not worth anything if you don't actually work the plan. And so we will be convening meetings of the steering committee on a quarterly basis to measure progress toward goals. We will be reporting that progress back to the board, and so that'll enable us to identify places where maybe things are not going as we had hoped they would. It's a living document, and so as we encounter new opportunities or run into obstacles, there's going to be a chance to kind of tweak the plan and make sure that we're focusing on the best opportunities for making progress toward goals. So that's where that is. I think I mentioned at a previous meeting, no, actually I wouldn't have, because we didn't have that information yet. We do have 2 architectural proposals, one from BKV Group, the other from a company in Indiana called Elevatus, and I'm going to be sending that to the members of the Budget and Facilities Advisory Committee for review and scoring. And we'll be setting interviews with those 2 firms. I think there's going to be a question that the advisory committee will need to grapple with, which is, the 2 proposals, they're different, and they're also not, we haven't gotten as many proposals as I kind of hoped we would. And so I think the committee will have to, have a discussion about, are we happy with these proposals? Are we content with interviewing these 2 firms and making a decision from there? Or do we want to go back out and try to get additional firms interested? So that's the architectural RFP. Then with the construction management RFP, that is still open. Proposals are due at the end of next week. We have sent the RFP out to 4 firms that have been recommended by other counties and who are also partners of AMC. And I don't have any additional information about that yet, other than we will be reporting back to the board once we get those proposals back, which will be after our meeting on Tuesday. So I won't have information before then.
Commissioner Mills.
What was the name of the first architectural firm?
BKV Group.
BKV. And then what are the 4?
They actually did the Aiken County Administrative and Judicial Center.
The BKV?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what are the 4 project managers? What are those?
Oh, Commissioner, I don't have those off the.
Okay. That's all right.
Off the cuff.
I was just going to also suggest McGough, if that hasn't been, because they
I
had
believe
done.
we did reach out to
Okay,
McGough.
okay,
Yeah.
great. They did great work for the city, and I think a number of times, so
Mhm.
just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
So that's it.
So whether or not there's any bonding funding coming from the state to help defer the full cost, we're going forward with the Justice Center.
We're going forward with the architectural planning to be competitive for the bonding.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. All right, on to commissioner reports and updates. Commissioner Hawkins.
Actually, I attended the same meetings that our administrator, Strategic Planning and Building Committee. And just a heads up, I encourage you to check out the MDH website about how to remediate, I say the word, for mold and what the standards are, because I think I encourage that we stick to the MDH standards when we're testing for air quality in our buildings. So that would be the only thing I have to add to the discussion. I think the Strategic Planning Committee meeting was very productive. It was good discussion about being realistic.
Mm-hmm.
We can be aspirational, but let's make sure we can succeed at having a strategic plan and not put it on a shelf because it's too ambitious. So good discussion. I thought
Yeah.
it went well.
Commissioner White.
Yes, a couple of things. One is about the aquatic invasive species meeting. I thought it was very interesting. There was a guest speaker from Lake County, and they talked about the CD3, and I still don't know what that means, but I know what it is. It's a mobile kiosk-like that will help clean boats when they come on and off of the water. So that was very interesting in pointing out that Lake County has one. They would love to have one down in Agate Bay, but it's not built to accommodate that particular piece of, an additional piece of equipment. So they have it, in a different, they have it at the Silver Bay Marina. And they're very pleased with what's happened so far. It's portable, it's solar-driven, and they believe the cost, which was like $20,000 and half of it was paid for by grant funding, that it will catch on in time when people understand better about what it is. But it's not a piece of equipment that she would recommend leaving at an public site per se, like any one of the little lakes we have. So it needs to be visible at all times.
I've heard some conversations around those, and it was discussed at some meetings I was at, and they also said a lot more people wash their boats when there's somebody sitting in a car nearby.
Yes.
Just noticing them.
Right, and
I
because
suggested a crash test dummy at every boat landing, but that didn't go over so well. But
well, and it's because it's on a trailer. You can hook it up and drive it away.
yeah.
So that's why public locations, well-lit, are very
But
important.
great innovation and,
Yeah.
step in the right direction.
But now there's another point that I'd like to bring up, and I know that this is a commissioner concern, and I know that would not be the normal place to address this. But at the last meeting, it was very clearly to me that I had my character question, toxic leadership, and about I ought to go get some leadership training. And to that end, I am addressing that. Back in the 90s, when my children were in grade school, I was one of the first 20 participants for the Blended Community Leadership Program, in which I learned you lead from the bottom. You look at the stakeholders. And there was that. I was within community education. Because the director was part-time and in part-time teaching, I was allowed to take over a lot of the responsibilities that she had, from the election forums to the public discussion forums to youth development, youth service, to intergenerational activities, and a little bit with the classes. From there, when the Northland Foundation came up, Cook County was one of the 10 pilot communities for their Kids Plus program. That was a program that reached out to youth and community members, helping the community and the youth understand how important they were to one another. When the Northland Foundation came here, there were over 100 people that participated on 2 occasions to talk about their communities and their youth and the importance of their youth. After the steering committee met and did the vision statements, I was given the opportunity to be the coordinator of that program. From there, I also worked with community education, and Kids Plus was a lot of programming. I helped develop programming. I didn't make them myself. It was working with other people. I wrote the grants to get the funding for the programming. And then there was the interim of 8 years working with the reservation, with their youth, and also grant-funded programming. And then with my last 12 years on the school board before I came here. So I believe that I've learned how to be a leader, and leadership does not focus on one particular group in an organization or in a community. You look at all of the stakeholders. It's a huge thing, stakeholders. And bottom line, as I said earlier today, Cook County government only exists to provide services for the citizens that live in Cook County. And so they are the #1 stakeholders that have to be considered in every decision that we make. Everyone else has a role to play. Everyone's very important, but no one is more important than the people that we serve. So when I am asking questions, it is for clarification. It is for understanding, not only for myself, but for the people that we serve. And so that's my leadership, and I do not believe that I have to apologize for my style of leadership. This is who my personality is, and it is off-putting to some people because some people need a lot more time to process, and they do a really fine job. But my leadership is to focus on those stakeholders and leading from the bottom. This door was opened up questioning my character, which has never happened in my entire life before. That door's been open and I'm shutting it, and I don't want to talk about it again. So I apologize for taking up meeting time to do this, but I felt since this was the public attack, more or less, I'm going to address it publicly. So, be that as it may, I'm done talking for now.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan, and thank you, Commissioner White, for your comments. It was me who brought up the notion of toxic leadership, and I think it's very real. I think we all need to be educated on what that is. I think it benefits our community to have training annually, at the very least, if not more frequently, because there's a lot more information out there than there was 33 years ago, and I appreciate historical trainings too, because we have to encapsulate it all. And questioning one's character can happen to one's face, or it can be happening behind one's back. And so I know my character is questioned behind my face or behind my back, and I know my character is questioned to my face too. And I'm happy to talk about that and to address it and to talk about concerns. I think that's a really important part of working together and growing together. So I've been approached by numerous staff thanking me for standing up and identifying some tones that are not helping our organization and actually are driving people away. And so, I mean, you might think it's funny, but it's very real for all of our staff. They don't deserve toxic leadership. They don't deserve undue stress. It's fine to question things. It's fine to question staff. I don't know that it's fine to make these pointed questions repeatedly to certain staff in a public setting, especially on camera. I think that is a disservice to our community. And I just, encourage us all to continue with trainings and continue learning from both the community and all of those that are underserved, as well as through statewide leadership and different resources that we have, because in our position we do need to run the whole gamut from the bottom on up. And it's I've been told to be in this position you really need to be like a duck. You got to just let the water run off your back, and that's pretty true. But you also have to be able to internalize what people are saying and really think about it instead of just having it run off of you. So I appreciate that feedback, and I'll try not to disparage anyone in the future. I apologize if this caused undue hardship for you, your family, or your community. That was not my intention. My intention was to support our organization and the staff here. I'm unwilling to tolerate what I consider abuse. It's, I try to be as open and understanding as I can, but I felt the need to draw lines, so. So attended the annual conference for AMC, chock full of different workshops. very difficult to pick between them. One that I picked that really hit home was the restorative justice presentation, and that was from Carleton County. And the numbers that they report are just staggering. And in this upcoming year, I am intending to make a concerted effort to bolster that program and make more connections with Grand Portage within that program and see if we can get something more than just a pilot program. Because every single person except for one on that panel said that they were against it. And then that one person maybe was against it too, I don't know, they didn't say that. But now every single one is hands down pushing hard for it and for us to do it and for anyone else in the region. And they'll admittedly say, I was wrong. We cannot afford not to do this because it's really investing in our children and trying to keep them out of the courts and the criminal justice system and try to do more prevention than anything else. And that is the most cost-effective way and a really healthy way to address things early on. A similar, at least it felt similar to me, program that I attended a workshop on was called the Yellow Line. And that sounded like it was more about just having less youth, maybe youth as well, but having just better communication between our departments in the criminal justice system to, again, try to prevent crimes and giving people support they need and just checking in with them. And that, again, it's staggering success, and I have handouts I'll bring to make copies and distribute. But both of those programs were just very exciting, overwhelming, of course, too, because, well, a lot of the legwork with restorative justice has already happened, but there's still plenty of work that needs to be done there. So, but developing that is I think, a real noble cause. There was a keynote presentation on cybersecurity, and that was very entertaining and somewhat similar to the private session we had with Rowan. Did a demonstration about vulnerabilities and had some anecdotes, talked about Fortune 500 companies, and there was even a hack that morning of the presentation. So he was trying to give up-to-date information, and he's like, I put all this stuff in the presentation, and then wouldn't you know it, this morning there's another one. So that was pretty eye-opening, and then also just the presentations from Gordon Graham, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, the younger guy, Scott something.
Oh, yeah.
But they were both really good, just talking about how to lead, what's effective with people, how to better communicate, identify one's own fears and to try to address those and not let them control us. It was a lot of really good notes, and I wish I would. My only regret is I didn't go to the workshop following Gordon Graham's presentation, and that would have been good. But other topics like neuroscience and other things are really interesting too. So that was all AMC, and very grateful for going to that and having those perspectives and making those connections with fellow commissioners from around the state. Yesterday, I went to Duluth for our annual Community Health Board meeting, and nothing huge to report there aside from a report we got from Dave Lee from Carleton County, just about the goings-ons of, I mentioned the Birch Tree Center to this board, and those challenges, and it's escalated significantly. There was a meeting with tribal partners and Thrive so that tribal partners could express the power of the naming of the center and just the significance in Native cultures. And they didn't respond to the tribes straight up. And that's a slap in the face. And then on top of that, they sent a cease and desist letter to the AHA for the use of that name. So it's another slap in the face. And AHA is not intending to take legal action, but we are certainly intending to stand behind our tribes and support them with whatever path they choose to take. But it's really, after all that we've learned about cultural sensitivities and working together and defeating racism, it's staggering just to run right into it. So that's unfortunate and to be continued. However, on that note, as far as AHA is concerned, this is my third term as board chair on that. So I'm ineligible to hold a office position again, and considering that I'm going to have to offload some of my committees, I was thinking about doing that one. And that used to meet every other month. We've switched it to quarterly. It is possible that it will be more frequent again, depending on how things go with the regional conversation regarding our facilities there with Thrive. And yeah, at this point, I don't anticipate it more than going quarterly, but it certainly could. There's been lots of back and forths in between. The other board that I would probably want to step off of is AEOA, and that meets in Virginia every other month. Wednesdays, which Wednesday is it? I don't recall, but is it the second Wednesday of the month? But anyways, those are two, and then I'm still evaluating if there's other ones I can get off of my 27% plate or whatever. See if there's any other meeting. That's probably all for now. We did have the library board meeting, and we reduced that budget again because of health insurance decrease. We budgeted for an assumption with family or whatever, and they took the single or something like that. But we did get our book budget back up to, or materials budget back up to 2020 levels. And we had been cutting back on that to try to lessen the blows for costs in the community during the pandemic. And the usage at the library has kind of shown that, and there have been plenty of comments asking for, up in the materials. Not that there aren't good ones there, but more is better. Also, we've got the microfilm, new microfilm machine, so I don't know if you've had a chance to use it, Commissioner Starley, or feedback, or?
I'm so happy about that
Oh, good.
because we could actually print out whatever we're looking at, and I was working with her on getting that.
Yes, thank you for your advocacy. It certainly made a difference there. And yeah, the old machine is now with the Historical Society, so they're very excited about that. It's kind of funny, but yeah, it was a good conversation there too, because there was grant money available for the microfilm, the new one, and the board decided. I guess I went in full circle in the discussion, but the board decided just to pay for it straight up because the management of that grant would be another burden on staff that there just isn't capacity for. And we had the funds in this designated fund, one-time expense fund, so it all worked out. But I'm just trying to be as prudent as I can, and if there's grant dollars, I'd really like to go after them, but I also understand the limitations and the burdens that can place. So, that's probably enough talking for now.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Storley.
Well, I had the privilege of attending a local NACO meeting. NACO, Association of Minnesota Counties, happened to be here in Minnesota because Ramsey County, Mary Jo McGuire is also president of NACO. And this is a very unusual situation where she would bring it to Minnesota, but because she's the president, she said, I think I would want to also extend it out not only to the board members of NACO, but to enlarge it to be a symposium. And so that's why we were all invited to attend as members of NACO, being county, and then I represent us. The theme was Forward Together. And there were 3 areas that we heard discussion and speakers on. One was to build and connect bridges among the county officials, and to inspire engagement among us, and also to lead in intergovernmental partnerships. So we had a speaker that addressed each one of those topics. And my notes would go on, but I would say we also had the privilege of going over to 3M. We had people from California to Texas to Alabama, Florida, and so she wanted to show off 3M because it's in her county. It's in Ramsey County. And if nothing else, we all know what a sticky note is, and that came from 3M. So we had a tour of 3M. We also had a presentation in the afternoon on workforce and working with young people in Ramsey County, and what some individuals are doing, what some groups are doing, what 3M is doing. And so that was very inspirational. We also had a chance to have some dinners at the Landmark and also at the Depot in downtown St. Paul. The Depot, I don't know if you remember, many years ago was in really disrepair. And a couple of people took on the project of repairing it, and it's beautiful now. And it's used as a bypass for the train station. If they ever get the train going from Duluth, it won't stop there. It'll go to the Target Center, but it'll pass through on the tracks. So someday maybe we can all enjoy the Depot, but we certainly did. And as we all have conversations at AMC, we also had conversations with smaller groups, and just understanding where commissioners are in New Mexico, what they're doing in Alabama, what they're doing in New York, was, it's all part of this. So, James, I would ask that maybe a little project in the future, and I know you wanted to do this, is to have a workshop for us, just as commissioners, and to talk about some of the things that we talked about, public engagement, and the 3 things that she feels are important to build bridges among us, and to lead. And at one time you had suggested Roger Reinert. Well, he's going to be mayor of Duluth now, so I don't know if he's going to be on the road to do these, but a person like that. And I think it would be important for us to sit down and discuss some of these topics. That would be something in the future you could look into.
Yeah.
And you know what I said, an expert has to be 50 miles or more, so.
Well, they could live in Cook County, and
we probably
that
have somebody
criteria.
right here. I know. I'm sure we do. So that's my big report for now.
Well, thank you so much for attending. Just appreciate your service and all you bring back from NACO and representing all of us. Really important work. Commissioner Ross.
I don't know, I can't remember what Commissioner Stoll said, but it triggered another memory from AMC, and that was on the Public Safety Committee. We had, it was Ramsey County, that's what triggered it. Ramsey County Attorney John Choi presenting, and I'd never met him before, and he's been in the news a lot. Pretty interesting, and he ruffled a lot of feathers because he's really advocating. Well, he put a disclaimer, this is for his community, but he was really advocating for doing away with traffic stops for expired tabs, or a single brake light out, or those violations that are not an immediate public safety concern. And he characterized the tab enforcement as police becoming the tax collector, because these are dues or fees that we pay, and then for our public safety officers to be enforcing that, it's actually causing a lot more trouble than it's worth. Oftentimes, peace officers take the opportunity to see if there's anything else wrong or going on, and often, in hopes of keeping our public safe, and whether that's collecting unlicensed firearms or drugs or whatever. He is one of those people at the conference who has gone full circle. He sounded a lot more hardcore earlier in his career about cracking down and cracking skulls sort of thing. And now he's saying that results in a 2% collection of guns or drugs or whatever, and it's causing so much harm in the community, decreasing trust in law enforcement, and so he's not prosecuting those, and the room not erupted. One guy erupted straight up. He yelling, shouting, and walked out. But there was a lot, because the Public Safety Committee is largely retired peace officers or firefighters or EMS. So it was very interesting, and I applaud him for being brave and speaking up there, but it was not popular at all. But the statistics and the data. He was also very good about saying, this may not be the appropriate thing in your community, but just know for our community it is, and it's having improvements, leaps and bounds with just trust in law enforcement. And I know down in the metro, that's one of the big challenges they're having. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. So if I look at kind of my last couple of weeks, we had a Cook County Local Energy Project, and the good news is we're continuing our builders workshops, and they will be hosted at higher ed and giving continuing ed credits for builders related to energy efficiencies, installation of heat pumps, those types of things. So that will be occurring in February. We had a Firewise meeting at the end of November, and the big discussion was that for the first time anyone could remember, there was no notification given about some piles being burned. And dispatch had a lot of calls right away, and even members of the U.S. Forest Service were unaware at their office that the piles were being burned. So we talked about the importance of communication and just making sure that everyone knows, particularly law enforcement, so when dispatch gets those calls, they have an answer or response. Sheriff Eliason was unable to attend the meeting, but that kind of brought back to us a lot of the people coming to that meeting have positions where they might get called out to different things, and just a reminder that turn in a written report afterwards, if you're unable to attend. Let's see, last Wednesday evening had our Community Leadership Racial Equity Group meet, and we had 2 representatives from the University of Minnesota Extension join us to talk about the possibility in the future of having a community dialogue entitled Coming Together for Racial Understanding. So we're just in the beginning stages of discussion and how that might look here in Cook County. Then at AMC, had the Tribal Forum on Sunday, and then had a fabulous workshop titled Pursuing Culturally Appropriate Parks and Trails Land Development. And in the past, there have always been, let's say, archaeological surveys done prior to a park being developed, but now there is something new called a cultural survey that's been added to that. So the example was about a 430-acre park in Sherburne County, and the cooperation and collaboration between Sherburne County and the landowner who donated the land, and then the Mille Lacs Band and the Upper and Lower Sioux. But it was a really great model, and I'm very excited to participate and maybe see applications for replicating that here in Cook County someday. Attended our Environment and Natural Resources Policy Committee and kind of formalized policy recommendations for the upcoming legislative session, and then a big discussion on the Tyler decision, looking at tax forfeited properties and the implications for counties on what to do with any surplus funds. And so great discussion. We had the Hennepin County attorney there to talk about the implications for their office on the number of cases that they might be dealing with, how far back you'd need to go. Don't worry, the we don't need to go back to the 20s and the 30s. They're talking about a 5 or 6 year window, much more reasonable, and everything in process is really good. And so I think we'll be well positioned to go to the legislature this year and be able to come up with some new legislation that meets and is in alignment with our Constitution. And then to piggyback off what Commissioner Mills said, a lot of information on technology, went to numerous small workshops dealing with cybersecurity, and one that was really fascinating was about digitizing county services and the ability to actually put an app on your phone and 24/7 for families to be able to come in, rent a facility, fill out a form for Public Health and Human Services. I mean, it was just amazing to see what we're on the cusp of. And when I think about CR-BPS and kind of the things they do with information that we have, thinking about all the changes in information and technology we're going to experience as a county in the next 10 years, it's going to be quite dramatic, and lots of changes with law enforcement related to technology as well. So anyway, very valuable sessions. It was a privilege to represent us, and came back with so much that I learned. I'm waking up at 1 in the morning thinking of, oh, we've got to do this, this, and this, and I need to just calm down a little and take it all in, and then think about prioritizing all the good things that we came back with. So that would be my report. Anything else for the good of the order related to commissioner work? All right, if not, we have some correspondence and memos. Attorney Hicken worked very hard on revisions for our 2024 Commissioner Handbook. And so there's information in there with bylaws, our per diem policy. I would encourage all our commissioners to dig through that, give any kind of feedback. I know I have a lot of things I came back with from AMC to look at related to that. And then we have our lodging tax comparison. And then all of you, if you recall back to November, I had said we have a chance to participate in the public hearing or to give public comment on the Raining River, Vermilion River One Watershed One Plan. So that link is there for you. And then our recognition of our great staff. So we have December staff anniversaries. Allison McIntyre, PHHS, 11 years. Ben Hallberg and Lindsay Melky, both with 19 years in law enforcement. Mark Buckman, also at the LEC for 1 year. Neva Maxwell, Land Services, 2 years. And Diana Lindquist in the same office for a full decade. Julie Kinney, PHHS, also a decade. And Lisa Sorley in the Highway Department, 15 years. So we appreciate all the staff and what they do for our community and for all of us as commissioners, all the support they provide. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support. Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
I had a discussion with